You ready? All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Alexis Karenbot.
I'm John Wheelock.
I'm Katie Geyer.
And I'm Dan Brzezinski.
And our mentor is Dennis Quinn with Christopher Consultings, and our developer is Madison Homes. I'm going to start off with the location, the zoning ordinance, and the slope. Our location is in George Mason Boulevard in Fairfax, Virginia. Our developing goal was to have single-family detached homes. Where our site is located is in Fairfax County, which is zoned R1, which allows for one house per acre. This is not what our developer wanted or what the comp plan wanted. So we rezoned to PDH 8, which allowed for a maximum of 8 units per acre. This also had no setbacks and area requirements and minimal site distance site. 25% green space was required, as well as a 20% tree canopy within the 10 years. Development of the site would be very easy because our slope is very non-existent, and minimized grading is required. Our current land use right now, to the west is green space, and to the east is a bus parking lot. Our conceptual design, our goal was to fit as many plots as possible while maintaining 25% green space and having a very pedestrian-friendly environment. Our first conceptual design had 46 lots and one access point on George Mason Boulevard, which limits the disturbance of traffic. We had slow community speech, which makes for a very pedestrian-friendly environment, and we had limited off-street parking. Our second conceptual design had 55 plots, 2 points of access, which disturbed the traffic but utilized the space better. Again, we had slow community speeds and lots of off-street parking. Our next slide, you're going to see a progression of what we thought with our project. As you can see in our progression, the conceptual design stage and our final decision. Picking our first conceptual design allowed us to have a more green community, a better flow within the community, and less impact to current traffic. I'm going to pass it to John. He's going to talk more about the roads.
Thank you. Okay, as mentioned before, there is one existing road that runs right through the middle of our site, and that's George Mason Boulevard. The Fairfax County Comprehension Plan desired one access point, so we honored that in our design. This is our site. These are 1-foot contours, so it's very flat. And our proposed roadway is on the right. We have Harlequin Court on the left with the cul-de-sac, Christopher Lane on the right, and Road Street connects George Mason Boulevard at one point. We're going to use private roads. We designed for private roads to have a little more flexibility in our road design. We maintained VDOT standards for almost all of it, except for really the 50-foot cul-de-sac, which is a little bit tight, and it's a little smaller than what VDOT standardized. We calculated our ADT to be about 400, which allows for 15-mile-per-hour design speeds, 28-foot right-of-way with 12-foot lanes, and 2-foot curb and gutter. This is our bulk grading. This is with the existing conditions. It's a little crowded, but I wanted to show you that the main thing we did was remove this dry swale at the bottom of our site to make room for our building pad and for some green space. It's a little close up. But on the right here is our bulk grading, and our main focus was the building pads, and we held a high point along the middle of the building pad about 2 foot above the proposed roadway to allow for drainage. It slopes in either direction, about 20-to-1 on towards the road and about 10-to-1 towards the back. And that was really the main focus of the bulk grading, and there wasn't too much else to it. And the detail grading was fine-tuning that bulk grading, and we held a constant elevation for the finished floor still 2 feet above the proposed roadway, and then we had a 5% grade sloping for 10 feet out from the finished floor, which equated to about half a foot drop over 10 feet. And lastly, we added a swale in the back to account for the drainage, because this is along Harlequin Court. We had a large green space over here, and there would be a lot of storm water to talk about, and that's where we'll go next with Katie.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the stormwater. Here you can see our pre-development watershed. You can see it's mostly in one watershed heading to this low point down here as marked by the green X. We used the rational method, and we used 3 different type of concentration lines all flowing to that one point to find that our total pre-development flow rate was 23 cubic feet per second. And here you can see all of our post-development watershed delineations all also flowing down to this final point, and our total post-development watershed or flow rate was 29 cubic feet per second. Here you can see our proposed stormwater lines, which are shown in the dark color. We decided to tie into existing inlets on George Mason Boulevard. There are 7 of those, as seen by the darker blue. And we also chose to install 12 new inlets, which are shown by the lighter blue. Those we placed in low points or before intersections to prevent too much water from entering intersections or ponding on the site. In order to make up for the difference between the pre-development and post-development flow rates, we decided to install a detention pond down here. This would have to be about 0.17 acre feet, which is about 7,500 cubic feet. Since there's an existing swale in this location, it made sense to place it here, especially since all the water was drained from there. So there didn't have to be a whole lot of drastic grading changes made, since there is also an existing outlet structure there as well. Also required by Fairfax County are best management practices, so we looked into what would be our best options, and we ended up settling with dry swales, since they would reduce the amount of water exiting the site as it flows through. Now I'm going to move into a little bit about the erosion sediment control plans. We decided to line most of the site with super silt fence, which would prevent water or dirt from flowing off of the site as grading is occurring and stockpiles of soil are building up. We also put in diversion dikes either to direct water towards a sediment basin or sediment traps, as well as to keep clean water from coming in off of the site on the west side. We have one sediment basin where the detention pond I mentioned earlier would be going, and also construction entrances to prevent trucks from tracking dirt on and off the site as they move. As needed, temporary seating will be installed up until final design, which you can see here. As we put in the inlets that I discussed earlier, we would add inlet protection and remove the sediment traps we had on the east side. The sediment basin and the diversion dikes leading to that sediment basin, as well as the super silt fence around the site, would stay in place until design is complete, and then the sediment basin would be turned into that detention pond. And now I'm going to pass it over to Dan.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the wet utilities. Here you can see we have both sewer and water. They're in their own separate lanes in the roadway so that we can meet the 10-foot horizontal and 18-inch separation requirement. The sanitary line proposed its own unique problem. Because our only existing tie-in is up in the northwest corner here, which is actually one of the highest points on the site, we weren't able to gravity feed all of our sewage to that point. So what we had to do was design to bring all the sewage to the low point on our site and then install a pump station which will bring all that sewage back up to the top. The lines are 8-inch PVC and are designed to hold 68,000 gallons per day. The water system we didn't have any problems with. There's an existing 6-inch line up in the north here and a 12-inch line down here to the south, which made it really easy for us to loop our water lines together, which is a requirement for Fairfax County. And this is an 8-inch ductile iron pipe that supports 30,000 gallons per day for the residents and a 6,700 gallon per minute fire flow requirement. Lastly is our cost. The final cost of our project was $1.31 million. Some of the major costs for this project were the storm pipe, especially the 24-inch storm pipe near the outfall location, the PVC for the sanitary, the ductile iron pipe for the water lines, and then obviously roadways and driveways were a huge cost for a development like this. And does anybody have any questions? Great.
Yes.
Did you have to consider any traffic control in crossing the road?
Yes, that's why we decided to go with the first conceptual design with only one intersection. It was just about in between the two existing intersections. And I actually got a chance to go look at the site, and I lived near there a couple summers ago. So I knew that it could get a little crowded, especially with the traffic in Northern Virginia. But we figured it wouldn't be a problem because it stayed away from most of the existing turn lanes.
I don't know. No questions asked? Can I let them off? All right. Good. Thank you.